Hello, one and all. My name is Chris Nelson. This is the Great Work Launchpad, and we are November 26th, 2025. So welcome. We're going to be continuing to talk about shadow work related to what is motivating you, fear or love. Not that ooey gooey love, lovey-dovey, romantic stuff, or that I love candy, I love bananas, or love that person, I care for them. We're talking about the higher love. So the Great Work Launchpad is all about getting you rocketed up, launching you into the great work of living by truth, love, and freedom, to create freedom. So that's what this show is all about. And to help people along that journey, well, we're talking about shadow work. You got to do the work on yourself. And on the show, you can come on feeling jittery, not comfortable enough doing it on your own. You can have an avenue to try to get more comfortable being online, or you can get tips on how to start doing things yourself. And so then you can get started in your own way, even if it's not with your face. So no problem. You don't have to start putting yourself out too publicly. You can ease your way into it. Hey, Brendan, how's it going?
Hey, what's going on? Still getting set up.
All right, no problem. Yeah, so come on by if you're looking to put your voice out, get started somehow, or learn, get some suggestions on how you can move yourself forward to getting started to do something. And that's what we're talking about now is related to the excuses people have for not getting started and how that fits into the dynamics of fear or love. Because if you care enough about it, then you're going to get involved somehow and get started and then elevate from there, ratchet it up from there, get more involved in your own capacities of doing it. And when you're in fear, the last one we were talking about was fears about losing worldly attachments. And we did fears about skill sets, so you don't know how to do X. We talked about fears about personal characteristics, that you're not X enough, you're not good enough, smart enough, motivated enough, or you can be not skilled enough, you don't know how to write, you don't know how to do audio, you don't know how to video, you're not a good speaker. And we ended on fears about losing worldly attachments. So you're afraid of losing X, something that you like, that maybe you cherish, that you're fond of, that you identify with. So it could be a relationship, a friendship, a spouse, a career. And when we get to career, well, that's associated with money and your ability to afford an existence, so a house and food, electricity, internet, etc., having a life. So these things are tied to our fear of survival. So when you're fearing to lose something, it's often tied to this primal fear of survival, of not being able to survive. And we also talked about how losing some things in this capacity, well, they wouldn't necessarily be genuine or authentic, relating to what is genuine or authentic or real or true in terms of a relationship. Well, if the relationship doesn't like that you talk about things that are true, quality truths that are important, then how much of a relationship is it really? Because most of our relationships are based on what we don't say to each other more than what we do say, because the things we don't say are the things that we don't want to rock the boat, don't create any conflict. Of course, I'm talking about always quality truths. You can talk about other things that are less important and create conflict, and fine to avoid those. Like maybe someone, I don't know, I'll shoot something out related to baseball. Maybe someone's a Yankees fan and the other one's a Boston Red Sox, and and they hate each other. I think there's a rivalry there. I'm not sure, but yeah. So, who cares if you talk about that? You don't need to talk about that. We're talking about quality truths, morality. So part of the problem of the sphere is not having that authentic connection to begin with. I mentioned Passio talking about you got to have the connection, a common connection to truth, at least at some level, where you can unite at that, whatever level you're at. And I've talked about this in my work, that unite at the level you're at with other people. And if you're at a higher moral level, well, you can collaborate with people at lower levels. But, I'm talking about living together and really having a more strong bond together. You got to do it pretty much at the same level, because if you're not at the same level, it's going to be disjointed, and it's not really going to be a good unification where you're at. You're going to have to do more compromise than if you're at the same level of, I guess, moral adherence would be the thing that's more important. That's why my slide back then, 11 years ago, was about morality and uniting at the moral level that you're at. So that comes into play when we're talking about jobs and what other people have as jobs, working for the government or police or military or medical job. They can be morally misaligned. And so people can be doing wrong and don't want to hear it and don't want to admit it. And then there's the conflict, and then they're going to not want anything to do with you because you're attacking a core part of their identity. When we identify with things, we take it into ourselves, our sense of self. And whenever criticism is brought to those things that we deeply identify with and have this attachment, it's automatically viewed as an attack on yourself because of how you've incorporated that thing into your whole ego personality identity construct, and then you engage in ego defensive measures to reject, deflect, deny, dismiss, and get angry, and you have all these negative emotions that relate to cognitive dissonance, and whether you're going to listen to them can be a teacher, and if you want to ignore them, then you keep holding on to your attachment to falsity that you don't want to let go of. Yeah, so you can hold on to that for your identity, money, survival, security, or the prestige. All these things are pretty much related to identity. So one thing I want to mention, I uploaded, I got a comment on one of the uploads, which doesn't happen very often. So I uploaded last week's episode. And it just goes to show the mindset of people who can come across this. And, it's not going to be for them. So their comment was, low energy and boring AF. So that's boring as fuck. And I was like, yeah, I'm just going to delete this because you're just trash. You're the dross. And they just happened to stumble across the video, I guess, and they're low energy. Yeah, we got to be like Twitter streamers, Twitch streamers, and we got to be like, rah, so excited about our game that we're playing or something. Well, we're not. That's not what we're doing. We're teaching things, and it's boring. Yeah, that's right. That's what we talked about many times. Philosophical topics are boring.
Hey, the truth is boring, and that's why no one pays attention to it anymore. I guess it's hell is not cool. It's not what's trendy. Yeah, it's boring. Wow.
Yeah. Thinking what? Going deep into reflecting about reality and these core fundamental principles. Poof, that's not fun.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. The lack of discipline.
Yeah. So I just wanted to mention that. I was like, this is exactly why, there's the argument for disable your comments, or you can just ignore these idiots. But, how much are you going to be teaching people with that mindset? You're going to focus on trying to reach people like this. How are you going to even reach them? They're not even interested. That's why you just got to, you put it out, and whoever can come across it, whoever has an interest, maybe someone wouldn't have been interested in it, and they would have come across it, and then they would have been like, oh, this is pretty interesting. It's not about the energy level of people, or whether it's like some popular topic or whatever, but it would be something that would strike a chord with them, like, oh, I never thought about this, and this is really interesting. And those people might make use of it. But if you're trying to, like, I gotta be more popular, I gotta reach more people, and that's what your focus is on, well, then you're going to stray more towards these people who want the energy and they want interesting things. But those aren't the people who are going to necessarily be interested in the first place, because they're not interested in the actual content. They're just interested in the delivery of the content. Yeah. Hey, Nick, how's it going?
Hey, brothers. How's it going?
All right.
Howdy.
I just did the shadow work course on the weekend, so I thought it'd be a good time to drop in and say g'day.
Cool. Yeah, do you guys, I know Brandon was there, and I guess you were there. Do you guys want to talk about it? What were you could do a reflection, have some words to say or whatnot.
Sure. First off, it was long, long class. A lot of information, and I'm an individual, who can, muster through, but it was a lot of information, especially in the last two parts. A lot of information, a lot of practical information, a lot of easily understood, information that can be used by the individual to actually, tailor themselves. But the biggest thing that I got out of this whole presentation, and this gets to what Chris was talking about, is the importance of will. Because people don't know how to keep pushing because it's like Chris was talking about. This person says low energy, boring as fuck. But if you actually cared for the truth and you actually cared for the knowledge and the information, even if from energetic frequency, we may not be as, like from energetic as some people, but if you truly care for the truth and you truly care for the knowledge, you will sit down and you will yourself through it. And that's what I took from the course, is the importance of will. And when you get to, how Mark breaks down those steps, you know, he talks about this, kind of a lot freaking his presentation, because a lot of people will just give up. How a lot of people are just soft and they'll cower and they don't know how to push through. Like they don't have that fire, like they don't have that, have the desire. But like when it comes to doing, the shadow work, if you are not willing to actually take those steps in the physical world, then you're not going to get to that destination that you say you want. And that comes with that care and will. And those are two things that have to be combined in order to get to that destination. So if you lack the care, then you're not going to be motivated, but you can still have somewhat level of a motivation, but you still lack the will and the drive to continue and to pursue and to have that level of persistence. One thing that he made clear in that, seminar is this is, not going to happen overnight. Like this is not, like people want that, that quick outlet, that, tell me, have the synopsis so I can learn this, like quick for overnight. That's not going to happen. This is a lifelong, journey. And that was the biggest thing that I took from, hell. And I'm not going to release, a lot of, critical information because, he just asked us not to yet. But like when you see the way he breaks it down, it is actually practical, easy to understand. And he just breaks it down in a 3-part process as far as shadow work that can be used. And of course, his mark is hard hitting, but it was very intensive. But it was a lot of information, because it was a lot of questions that the individual can ask themselves in front of the mirror. And not only is there questions, there's actually steps that the individual can actually start to do to actually get to what they said they want as far as asking those questions. So it's like it's steps that you can actually go through, real world things that people can actually practice. And then two, like we talk about shadow work, I think one thing people don't forget about is something that has to be done and quiet like environment where one can quiet the mind and kind of, start to, you know, like listen to their thoughts and, like realize which thoughts, were put there, by other people. And that's one thing people forget is, like trying to do this kind of work, shadow work, like in a noisy environment is not going to be as successful. If you have kids, you have technology, you need to, find a place, help where you can learn to, you know, silence the mind and start to go deeper, in your thoughts. And that's something that I think a lot of people, take for granted because they want to, like have that phone there or, they have the kids freaking in the background. Well, it may not be as successful. And then two, I still haven't thoroughly gone through it just because, like this week's kind of busy, but yeah, I still plan on rewatching it and then going through it a second time, third time. But yeah, I think once people start to watch it and they actually get into, like the steps that he presents, I think it'll actually be some great value. And like you said, it's going to come down to the individual and how much worth they put into it, because it's not just about attending that seminar. It's about what do you do once you have that knowledge of the seminar, and I think that's where how the real value is going to come from, is what is the individual going to do once they take in that information? Are they just going to sit on it, or are they actually going to study it and apply it and affirm it? Then therefore, they can get into the actual steps that can come to, healing the individual.
Yeah, Nick, did you want to?
Yeah.
say
I mean,
anything about it?
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I suppose I can speak without being granted permission. Yeah. So, yeah, I would. Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate what Brandon said. For me, it started at 2 a.m. and I'm still processing it and going through it a second time. And I didn't really want to kind of give a review, but I guess I'll be giving a review of some sort. I guess the reason why I didn't want to give a review per se is because I don't want to review something inauthentically, even though I did attend. Because as Brenda said, it's about now doing the everyday work in that quiet space moving forward, and I think that's a big part of it, right? Is because when everything's silent and you're by yourself and there's no one watching and there's no clicks or views or whatever it is, it's really that deep introspective work that you're not going to get any applause or dopamine hits for doing. I guess the first thing that or the main takeaway initially for me has been around the simplicity and the breaking down of the steps and the pragmatic approach. um, I guess it in a way it kind of demystified a lot of it, because um, I think part of uh, not to speak for other people, but like how do I say this? Like maybe on some level, maybe we expect some kind of deep you know knowledge from tens of thousands of years, which has been passed down, which is going to unlock the secrets of the universe, which is going to get it into the multiverse and blah blah blah, because this is like the cosmic whatever. And it's like look at yourself in the mirror and without giving it away, but like simple steps, pragmatic. This is where you want to go, having the will to get there, putting them into steps and actually achieving it. And it really just demystified a lot of it. And it's like my late father was uh, would say like slow and steady wins the race. And there's this, and there's maybe it's an Aussie thing as well. I just think there's something for that kind of getting in and getting it done, or like just kind of chipping away, or step by step. And yeah, I mean, what I took out of it was the simplicity, the pragmatism, and the practical approach. Interestingly, that was not what I was expecting going into it, but that's what my initial takeaway is. And so, yeah, I'm happy with that, because it feels like I've got uh, you know solid stuff to work with.
Cool. Yeah, I'll see it eventually, whenever it gets released, and see what it's about. Sure, it'll be pretty good, pretty informative, always is, and a lot of stuff that those of us who've been through his content will already be familiar with, and I'm expecting some new stuff and more detail, I guess, on precise ways, but it'll should be good. I'll eagerly await that, and I couldn't with a family and everything. I couldn't do an 8 hour thing, so that was not possible for me.
Yeah, especially on a Saturday, because it was a sacrifice. It was a sacrifice, just to attend it all day for a Saturday, so, but it was worth it, it was definitely worth it.
Yeah. All right. So, we're talking about worldly attachments. And, well, that's why I got this image from the AI, obviously, because I was like, oh, how do I want to represent attachments? And so I was looking at it as letting go of your attachments, dissolving yourself. Part of yourself is going to be shattered and deconstructed, so you got to be willing to. That's the whole alchemical process, remake yourself and be destroyed. So that's what this is, representing, that they're breaking apart and they're dissolving and being destroyed and fading away. And that's where the newer version of yourself can be remade by engaging in that process. And that is what shadow work is ultimately about, whatever process or mechanism you can use. And there's other people, other teachers who talk about shadow work and methodologies to use. But ultimately what you're doing is you're trying to remake yourself. That's the whole alchemical process. And so you have to destroy before you can recreate, from like the phoenix in the ashes, to be reborn, to purify. So we're talking about the attachments and letting go of attachments. So to be a truly good person, you have to accept that you're going to lose things, potentially. Not that it's necessary. Not that you're necessarily going to lose relationships or a career or your house or money or a life. But you have to be prepared that that's a possibility. And you have to be willing to potentially lose those things to try to be more of a good person, if that's what you want. For being moral, for serving morality, for serving the cause of morality, for trying to serve the cause of restoring true freedom. So you have to be willing to let go of those attachments, if that's what it comes to, and suffer through the hardship that comes along with that. So that's either losing a friend or a job. We need more people who will speak the truth, so that they quit to no longer participate in immorality. So if they're doing it themselves, you have to be willing, like, you got to quit this job. You know that you're contributing to an immoral ends, and you got to find another job. So there might be hardship in that. And if you want to be a better person, more of a good person, that's something you're going to have to do. The same with engaging in the great work of doing, ultimately, the goal of ending our enslavement is through moral education. You're going to have to sacrifice things and go potentially through hardship if you want to truly be a good person in that respect. So losing a career or a house should not be the main motive for what you're going to do in your life. That, I'm not going to lose, I don't want to lose this job, I don't want to lose my house if I lose my job, so I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep working at whatever company. Maybe you learn about the harms of the COVID injections, and then you're like, and your company produces them, and you're like, I'm not making them, I'm just working in this other department, I'm an accountant or something. But as part of being that gang, Passio's talked about it related to police. Someone who's just working behind a desk and doesn't work on the street, they're still part of that gang, just like the street gang member who's involved in like the gangs are involved in like suppression of the freedom to sell a product by claiming that they own a territory and then engage in acts of violence and theft of people's lives because they dare try to compete with them in a fair market. While you're still running, whatever, you're running packages or running money around or whatever. Someone who's involved in the gang in any capacity is still associated with the overall immorality of that endeavor. So in the same way, when you're working for a company or working for government, you're still a part of that overall machination of promoting the continuation of that thing, that gang. You're a part of that gang. And if your company is producing something that's doing harm, then you're part of that machine that's producing that harm. So we have to stop being immoral. You have to value that more and potentially suffer that temporary loss or hardship. And the people who reject this option of, that involves loss, that involves discomfort, that involves some hardship, and they reject that option, are why a lot of the evil continues, because people can come to the realization and they'll find excuses or justifications like, I need the job, I need the money, and they'll continue to do it. And that's what many people, I'm not saying all of them, but in the police and military, some of them can realize what they're doing and they'll still do it because they want that job security, or they want that pension down the line. So people can have objections by telling, you tell someone, well, quit your job if you're involved in doing something wrong. And people can be like, oh, that's wrong. You shouldn't tell people to quit their job. That's their life. That's their livelihood. That's how they survive. Well, people should do the right thing. And if that means not being paid to do immoral things, then the hardship of losing your friends or your jobs or an aspect of survive is something you should still do. If you think it's wrong, unjust, insulting, or irrational to tell someone that, then you're part of the problem as well. Because ultimately, you don't necessarily have to tell them, but they can piece it together when you're saying, working in the police or military, and you shouldn't be doing this job, and they can think about it themselves. But you can also directly tell them, well, if you're doing this, quit your job. Don't let them figure it out. Be explicitly tell them what they should do. And that's not something that's immoral or wrong or unjust. I'm sure it might be insulting, but they're the one doing it. They judge, insult, and offend themselves by their own actions. So people who want to say, oh, you can't tell people, you can't suggest that, you can't advocate for that, well, they're part of the problem, who are preventing the advancement of that apophatic pathway of upholding the sacred feminine, of the passive withdrawal of initiating harm. So doing the least harm they can because they can. So trying to castigate or make people feel bad because they're engaging in this type of moral education, instead of castigating and making people feel bad because they're doing something immoral, is not the right thing to do. You're targeting the wrong people when you're targeting people who are trying to be moral educators and tell people to stop doing immoral things. You should be telling the people who are doing the immoral things to stop doing them, rather than telling the people who are telling people to do that to stop doing that. That's where the principles, morality and freedom and rights, that's when those things become more important than any one or a group putting food on their table to survive. That's how we should value these principles, is that these come first, and this is what you stand on a solid foundation. And other people or putting food on your table, that has to be a secondary concern, because what you're doing, part of your immorality, is you're stealing from other people. And as long as you're stealing from someone else and you're benefiting from it, then you're okay with it, because that's what it boils down to. If you're engaging in a product, in a company, you're being paid, and the profits are coming from a product that's harming other people, then that initiation of harm, is a theft against the property of that person, their well-being. They're being poisoned because they're not properly informed and consensual in what they're taking. Then you're stealing from them, and literally you're getting paid for perpetuating that theft. Because if everyone quit that company, the company wouldn't be able to make their product, and no one would be taking it under deceptive reasons, thinking it would help them. So if someone won't stop doing that immorality, then they just have to admit that they're a bad person, rather than people say, no, well, don't tell them they're being immoral, don't tell them they should quit. That person should admit that they're being a bad person, and then live with that, and let that weigh on their conscience, and have guilt and shame, that maybe that will motivate them to change their behavior. But they first need to hear the truth, and even if they reject it, maybe down the line they'll listen to it. And obviously, people who have jobs like that, if you tell them that, then obviously you're immediately probably going to risk a fracture of the relationship, and that's your choice whether you want to tell them or not. As we'll pass it around, you want to add anything to that part?
Yeah, when you mention, or the most recent part, how you mention, at least if someone is truthful, to admit that they are a bad person, or at least somewhat truthful that they are involved with immoral things, at least, you were being honest and truthful, and that's hopefully when that guilt and shame and your conscience, will start to, hopefully have an effect. And another thing that I had thought about, which I know you talked about this a few weeks ago with the the four killers of consciousness. To kind of, like, because all this kind of goes, together, which all of this is kind of synchronistic, past your seminar timing with all this going on. But you have the ignorance, apathy, laziness, and cowardice, right? Which you talked about, you know, multiple times, but ultimately all ruled by fear, but these are really the four elements. And I guess you would say, like, it's negative connotations. You have ignorance, being air in the mind. You have apathy being water in the emotions. You have laziness being, like the physical hands, like the earth. Then you will have, of course, cowardice, the fire spirit. And, that's what, leads us toward that fear, to not want to speak out, hell, like, Chris was saying, you may be involved with immoral things. You may be involved with government. You may be involved, with order following. You may be involved with the seven transgressions against our natural law. But because, you become attached to your worldly possessions, being unfortunately gifted, because society gifts a lot of these things through positive reinforcement by way of, upward conditioning. So people see these things, and then they're like, well, I want these things. But then what comes with these things is the immoral behavior, going along to get along, not speaking out. And then you kowtow, hell, you are ignorant. You show your apathy, you have your laziness, and your, cowardice, because you won't do what's morally right. But in this sense, when you can understand, how you have been conditioned to be that way, then you can start to take those steps to, hell, again, get out of that, conditioning. So, hell, again, it comes back to the care, it comes back to the will, and then two, you got to have the knowledge, you know. In order to do all this stuff that we're talking about, is you have to have the right state of mind. You have to start to tailor yourself, to deprogram yourself first. Then therefore you can start to let all that nutrient dense correct information flow in and come through. So are you ready to change your worldview? Because that's really what we are talking about is the shifting of the internal worldview how that you hold, because those worldviews how that you hold may not necessarily be yours, you know, and those worldviews that you hold are having an effect on your life and those in your health environment. So if you truly care about, how doing, how this kind of work, you'll be willing to lose all of that baggage, all of the fear, all of the, ignorance, all of the apathy, all of the cowardice, all of that laziness, and finally admit to yourself, hey, I'm going to do the right moral thing, which requires care, will, and knowledge. Those three things are required. And then the last thing I'll say, um, which this was a quote in one of the slides from the presentation. Anything worth doing requires sacrifice. Anything worth doing requires sacrifice. That will forever be a true statement. If you want to do anything, it requires sacrifice. Doesn't matter what it is. So if you truly want to change and you truly want to get better and you truly want to change your worldview, that's going to require sacrifice. Something's going to have to be given up. So what are you willing to let go of? What are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to give up in order for you to get involved in doing this kind of work and getting involved in changing your own behaviors and your worldviews and healing your own trauma, your own internal trauma?
Yeah, I'll just jump on the back of that as well, and just to reiterate the personal sacrifice, I guess. In you know, I guess just from my experience, you know, as someone that started out on this path with things like Vipassana and things like that, I was at the time, and I didn't know about natural law. I was exploring the morality of working in online gambling affiliate marketing business, and coming from three generations of male lineage gamblers and so forth, and it kind of really clicked in for me going from my first vision quest to going to like a private thing in Switzerland in that industry. So I guess I had the clear vision to, at that moment in time, just to see that that was where that path was leading. And so, against all advice, and I was strongly advised not to, and all of this kind of thing, I exited that company and essentially, restarted life, and had to make. I mean, you could barely call it a sacrifice because exiting a company and so forth, but it's kind of changing career, changing what you do for work, changing where you focus, and reinventing yourself. Kind of what is moral. Even things that like where your investments are. What are you investing in? The software that you use. Where does your data go? There's kind of a lot of these kind of different uh, system exiting things. But it was clear to me that from a moral standpoint, like things weren't aligned, even though I didn't necessarily know, that at the time. But it is a process of sacrifice, and it's not always that easy either.
Yeah. If you want to go do anything, well, you're going to have to sacrifice the other thing that you want to do. That's the basic level where everything requires sacrifices. As soon as you want to do something and there's an option to do something else, well, you're sacrificing the something else. Whatever choice you make, there's always multiple choices in life. And whenever you choose something, well, that choice is automatically sacrifices the other things that don't get chosen. So, yeah, it applies to everything. And when we're doing the great work. That's what I'm trying to say is it's hard because you have to talk about things that people don't want to hear. You have to take your time to create content that not many people are going to want to listen to because it's low energy and boring AF, like the guy I was commenting on my video. Well, yeah, it's boring because most people are not interested in this. And I think last time you were here, Nick, or the time before that, I forget which one, and talking about how to get people's attention. And but that's the thing, is that this philosophical content is not what they're interested in. Even in the truth and freedom movement, what they're interested in is what I term the lower level great work aspect of making people aware of the problems. They just want to talk about the problems. And I just call them the flavor of the week, the flavor of the day. It's just a new flavor. What's the flavor? Oh, what's happening here? What's happening there? This happened. This person did this group did that. There's always so much of it, and it makes content easy, and it feeds into the bias of our novelty, things that are new. And that's why people create the content, because it's easier to create. People are more interested in it. They're going to get more attention because of the psychological factors related to it. So they're not talking about this boring stuff of deep psychological and philosophical issues. And that's where the why is, the why and the how of the solution of solving the problem. The other people just want to talk about the problem, but not bringing the solution. It's important to know the problem so that you can care about the solution, care about figuring out the solution, and put your will behind creating it. But if you're just talking about the problem, then you're never talking about the solution. You're not being a part of the solution. You're only being a part of getting people aware of the problem, and then maybe they're going to find the solution, but you're not providing the solution to them. And that's what.
Can I just jump in there, because I just find it so thick, and I want to address it like head on. Is like there's a lot of people that think that they're awake and or in this movement or whatever, but there's this like monotone vibe of like, yeah, but this is what they and this is this is what they're up to, and it's like, yeah, but, and it's like they can talk for hours and days and weeks and kind of elucidate all of the different things, and it doesn't matter what level you're on. There's always like, oh yeah, but the timelines and the whatever it is, the entity or the government or the elites or the interdimensional or there's like so many different angles.
Yeah.
But it's like, but there's this monotone like wall of like, and even people that are like quite famous in this field. I've spent some time with some people, and lecturers and all of that, and you sit down, and the first things out of their mouth is like, oh yeah, this is what they're up to. And it's like, I just like, there's like a depth of knowledge there, but it's like within a bandwidth that's just never going anywhere, and it's super fucking frustrating, if I'm being honest. And I know we're talking about it, but it's like, oh cool, you're awake because you know about like fucking Nazi technology or something, like, oh yeah, but you don't know about this that's out there. And it's like, oh, like, yeah, anyway, I'm getting a bit pissy just talking about it, but there's just
It's focused on all external. Yeah, like it's all external. They never go toward the internal. They never like get into shadow work, changing how you think, challenging, like what you think is true, like challenging your beliefs, like looking at your trauma. It's all focused on external stuff, and it doesn't touch upon how the internal. Because when you start to talk about that stuff, then that's when your viewers drop. That's when you do stop getting whatever deals. Hell, that's when the money stops coming in. That's when the donations stop, because then you actually start talking about real world practical things that require responsibility, will, care, and knowledge that most people don't want to do. Because we've talked about the external for the past 50 years. I mean, like, yeah, we know to a degree, who's controlling shit. We can talk about that and shit all day, but what are we going to do to change other stuff, like real world change. And that's the thing is because they don't understand what the true solutions are, because they still don't understand who the real enemy is, because they still haven't looked in, like in that mirror. Until you start looking in that mirror, you'll never really know who the true enemy is. So people can start saying it's all these interdimensional stuff, have reptilian, aliens, all that stuff. Hell, again, all that stuff is external. Not saying, there isn't some valuable knowledge, like in there. Some of that stuff can be true. Some of it, like may not be. I don't know. But I'm focused on here and here, and I think like that's where you really see a differential as far as teachers from what I've seen, because the ones who go more internal are more familiar with like, like deeper aspects of reality, like metaphysics and the occult world to a degree, compared to a lot of the, people who just talk about the external, which you can find millions of people talking about that. But yeah, I definitely, feel what you're saying.
Yeah, there's just a level that people aren't getting past. It's just like this, but, and it's like, oh, like the like the other, the energy, the force, it's like there's always a like, oh, there's like a but. So yeah.
Well, it's easier to focus on everything out there and to recognize that the responsibility comes back to you, because then that's where the work is. And they don't want that responsibility. And it comes, like we'll be talking about it later, and it's related to Passio's tree of evil. They're ignorant and they don't want to know because they fear the responsibility of having to do something with that knowledge. And because they don't care about themselves enough, because they weren't raised properly in consciousness and higher consciousness modalities. They weren't raised to want to heal themselves or love themselves. They don't know how to do it. So that's the unraised raising the unraised for millennia. And that's why they are where they are. And it's only they can get themselves over the failure of the fact that they weren't raised to value truth or understand these principles or understand how what the solution to the problem is, and they don't want to do the work to figure it out. Or figuring it out could be something that an individual won't be able to do on their own, but there's the information is out there and someone could be pointed to it, and they still don't want to go through it because they don't really see the value. They don't want to accept that that's the truth. Even if you tell them explicitly and you explain it to them, they're still not going to understand it. Brandon and I were part of, Jerry did a thing on natural law with people from the autonomy community. And I spent hours explaining.
Sorry, what's the autonomy community?
That's a thing with Richard Grove. He focuses pretty much on the effects too. It's just about talking about the history and the problems and all that, and he doesn't talk about the solution. A lot of his earlier work, when he was doing work on like the trivium and stuff like that, that was more interesting to me. But now he does Grand Theft World podcast. So there's a thing, autonomy, kind of like it's, I guess, a sibling in its effort. So he has this other thing. It costs a lot of money, but it's to help people figure out how they can be more autonomous. So that's a worthy endeavor in itself. And part of that is the group. The people can come together and they can, they do courses, they do workshops on figuring out things and practicing like interview skills and how to talk better and how to do things. And there's Jerry. And yeah, so he did a thing, and I don't remember where he posted it. I think it was on Telegram, and I was like, hey, I'll go check it out. So Brandon was there, and he was explaining stuff at the beginning, and there were these people, I don't remember how many there were, from the autonomy thing. And I guess Jerry was doing it so that they could understand natural law, and he brought Brandon in to like explain it. And then I was there, and then eventually like I joined in. And then I spent it must have been 3 hours, I think, explaining, because at that point I had done Natural Law, the Science of Morality, Part 1, 2, and 3. And I don't think the 4 was released yet, but I was working on it. So I explained everything in a logical progression of everything. And it's and then at the end, they were like, no. And it's and then I remember we're like, yeah, all right. Yeah, this is why I don't do this. This reminds me of why I don't do this, why I don't invest my time in trying to convince one person, because it's not a good use of my time. If you're interested in it, I create the content, and if you have the capacity to understand and follow my arguments, then you can understand it. And if you're not interested, then you're not interested. And I don't have to waste my time on you. Because imagine if we were just doing this to each person, and it was 3 hours. So it was shorter than my presentations. It wasn't as in depth, but I went through the core parts, the logical progression, and even at the end, they couldn't understand it. They weren't understanding, and they were just like, no, it's not a law. And I'm like, okay, well, I just finished explaining to you how it's objectively, your behavior is objective. And so what happens in your behavior, if you harm someone, that's objective in reality. It's not subjective. And based on that, you get results, and that's the law there, is the results. It's not, you do this and pigs turn into butterflies or something. No, it's operating by the functionality. The inherent functionality of reality is what allows that to happen, and that's what makes it a law. And understanding this is what, that's the goal, is getting people to understand how it is a law and how that makes it an objective aspect, because the quality of that law is whether something is moral or immoral as behavior, and then the law that the functionality of the universe will produce the output of the consequences being positive or negative for an individual. And that's just how reality works. And that's the law. That's the law of freedom. And yeah, they just didn't want to understand it, because they just didn't want to understand it. I explained it very well, I found. And yeah. So I forget why I was originally talking about this, but I guess it was related to what you guys were talking about. And yeah, the point of not focusing too much on trying to convince individuals, but more on putting the information out so that people who are interested can potentially come across it, and then you have a greater degree of impact with the expenditure of your time that you're already sacrificing. The return on that investment has a much higher degree of amplification. So a 3-hour video that you make can potentially reach hundreds of people and impact them in various ways, in positive ways, versus spending that 3 hours to talk to one person. It's like talking to a wall, essentially. Well, that's 3 hours wasted, as I see it. So I'm not much for talking to individuals as much as I am for creating the content that can reach many individuals, that force amplification of your time. It's more valuable use of your time. Not that you can't do that, but we've talked about it before. How much do you value your time? How effective do you want to be in using your time in the limited time we have on this planet? And that's why, in a logical way, in terms of efficiency and effect, it's much more critical, I guess I could say, to create content than it is to talk to someone or a family member. And you can already know the mindset of people in your family. And it's like, okay, go talk to them about this and tell them that they're doing something immoral. Are they going to listen? No, you're just wasting your time. So if you want to have conflicts in your family, then go ahead. I don't think you need to. You already know the mindset of the person. You already know. You've interacted with them. They're not interested. So you can tell them, like I'm saying, you could lose attachments. I'm not saying you got to go tell people they're being immoral. I'm saying you got to create the content that if they come across it, then they can understand that they're being immoral. But you can also tell them as well and not give a shit. And then you're like, okay, then, you want to have contact with that person in your family. That's your choice. I'm saying the critical part is creating the content that can reach many people. And you can say, hey, here's a topic. you want to send them the video and see if they're interested in it. On Facebook, there's something related to that. You can post a bunch of things. Like, I see people post related to like material of what's going on in the world or on philosophical subjects. People in the One Great Work Network or whatnot. So people will post on this and they'll get a certain amount of likes on their stuff. But then they post a personal picture about their family or their baby or something, and then it's like 5 times as many people are interacting, because those are the people who are the dead in their family and their friends, who are like, ignore everything else they post. And then when they post, oh, that's a cute picture, well, oh, I like it, oh yeah, and then they get engaged in the comments, oh, that's so wonderful, and that's all they care about. They're on a superficial level. All they care about is this personal philos aspect, this lower aspect of love, and the relation and the identification, and how they care about a person's individual life, but they don't care about the higher agape love of truth, good, right, morality. That is of no concern to them. They are completely unconcerned. And yeah, I guess that's what I wanted to say about that. I don't know what else I had to say, but anyone else wanted to join in? And hey, Jerry, a little bit late on that one.
What's going on?
What's up, Jerry?
Hey, Jerry.
You want to say something, Brandon?
No, it's just kind of contemplating. Brain's kind of tired right now. Was editing the video earlier for the One Great Work, Warriors. So getting past my bedtime, but trying to keep these thoughts maintaining in my big ass head. But a good show. Thankfully, we had another guest join us. So it's always nice. I shouldn't say nice. It's always a wonderful thing seeing people come on and willing to express and talk. And one thing I will say, and Jerry, I'm gonna put you on the spot because we've been doing this stuff like online for 3 years. One thing I will say about Jerry is he shows up. He shows up, and that's that's action. And people who can come on these shows, they don't even have to talk. It's just showing up, like bare minimum. Then you work your way up, and like that's the thing. Like that's how you build that consistency, like that's how you, start to build that discipline, is you start off by showing up, then you can start to, gain more knowledge and build that confidence to get in front of the camera. And so people can learn from Jerry. But yeah, it's end of for the end of the day, same stuff. Now I see why Pastor Joe keeps saying, he's been repeating himself for 19 years, because that's kind of what we've been doing, just coming on here, repeating ourselves, saying the same thing over and over and over, and trying to be repetitive to get people, to understand these core truths and the core messages. Because I deliberately keep repeating myself over and over so people can get what we are trying to say. I mean, because I don't know how much more bad things have to get, how much more suffering do people have to endure in order for them to, want to face that mirror and face that shadow.
Yeah, got to be a broken record. That's what I said a few times. Like, the whole point of this is being a broken record, because there's limited. This ain't flavor of the week, flavor of the day bullshit. This is eternal truths,
Yeah.
and there's a limited number of them. And so you're going to have to repeat it and say it in different ways and do different types of content. It's all about repeating. And yeah.
And the shit
gotta be a
ain't
broken
fun.
record.
The shit is not fun. It's not fun.
Are you not entertained?
What's that?
He said, "Are you not entertained?"
Oh, are you not entertained? Is that like a wrestling? I think there's that. Oh no, that's
yeah.
Gladiator, right? Are you not
Yeah.
entertained? Something like that.
Dude,
Gladiator.
that's crazy that I watched that movie part 2 like 4 weeks ago, and I used that quote. Pasha used that quote, and you just brought up that movie, and then Crip Rick had brought it up, and I'm like, yeah, like good movie, good movie with that good quote. The actions we do echo in hell eternity. But yeah, that movie, great movie.
It's all about entertainment. You can't be low energy and boring as fuck. You gotta be entertaining. That's
Well,
what captivates attention.
if I can bring something up, and maybe it was a bit off course, but like maybe around the concept of play, because I did notice in the Passio documentary, he was kind of sitting at his computer and he was like, basically like, whatever he said, like, this is very difficult to keep doing this in some more colorful language. But yeah, I mean, if we're talking about shadow work, right, and we're talking about our creative capacity, having an element of play seems pretty key, rather than just being like, fuck this shit like all day long on the computer. So it's probably, yeah, I'm not sure if this is too off topic, but it seems like a pretty important thing if we're, to keep things sustainable long term.
Yeah, absolutely. And my thing of play is I like shooting guns. I don't like paying for the ammo, but yeah, each individual needs to have some kind of hobby, something that they enjoy, some form of, side craft, something, um, that keeps you happy. You know, yeah, sometimes I like to crack jokes, like in the videos just to, kind of lighten up the mood, because a lot of time on camera I'm more serious, but yeah, you do need to have the element of play and, fun time, to a degree in your life. I mean, because no one wants to be miserable all the time, and you do need some form of enjoyment. And then again, it's not getting stuck there. It's not using it as a means of hell escapism, but like we all may have, like our things that we may do, for fun. Some people may, still like to watch sports, and that's, like if that's what to a degree, it makes you happy, to keep you maintaining, then hell, so be it. That's what the individual has to figure out. Hell, what makes you happy. An element of play. Like on the side. I'm sure, like that's kind of what you were talking about.
Yeah, and also even in the work itself, because yeah, I mean, just as you guys have been doing this for a lot longer than me, but having, especially part of a creative process, having an element of play, because that's obviously going to come through in the output.
Yeah, yeah. When I edit our One Great Work Warrior videos, I always like to put a little goofy Easter egg in a lot of them. I don't think most people realize that, but yeah, when I rewatch the videos, it just kind of gives me that laugh. Yeah, and there's one in in our recent video coming out next week. So, but that's just something that I do to kind of, kind of laugh. 'Cause laughing is kind of new to me. I never really laughed when I was, younger. Like I always had that mad black dude look, that that you don't smile when you're taking pictures look. And I was always mean mugging. Yeah, that was me. So, but yeah, you do need to bring the element of play.
Yeah, one thing you mentioned, I forget if you said it before it gets worse or something like that, Brendan. And you look at the world, and with AI, and it's likely going to result in like, a lot of people are talking about it's going to upset the human workforce balance that we have, and so there's going to be a lot of turmoil coming in the next 5 years. I think there's going to be a lot of civil unrest, and who knows how things may result from there. But yeah, it's definitely looking like things are getting worse. The CBDCs are coming in, digital IDs are coming in. We all knew about it years ago, and it's like state is going to state controls the game, so why would they not seek more control? That's what they're all about. So why expect anything other than, you find out about the plan for CBDCs, like, okay, yeah, that's coming. Why would it not come once they think of doing that? Same with digital IDs, like they're not going to stop. That's what they want. They want more control, so they're not just going to be like, oh, well, we're going to talk about it and then not do it. No, they're going to do it and convince people it's great, and people are shit for brains who buy into it and are like, yeah, it's great, Lou, I want it. Like what happened in the UK, I think last month or something, I forget where, but they voted on it and it was like, yeah, we want the digital, it was digital ID and they want it. And it was all the bullshit propaganda for why it's great. And people just lap it up and tastes good to them. So, yeah, we'll end it there. And thanks for coming by, everybody. Maybe see you around next week or another time. And in the immortal words of Passio,
actual great works of this world is in such a fucking hellhole, huh? How about trying to get out there and do the actual great works of this world is in such a fucking hellhole, huh?
All right. I clicked play and it like started halfway through the... Anyways.
Yeah, you mind if I share something, Chris?
Sure. Go ahead.
Right before. So I just wanted to say regarding the autonomy meeting that did not go to waste, because I'm going to go rewatch that soon. And also Chris Jansen watched that video and he said that it helped him to create the spiritual mathematics presentation. So although it fell on some deaf ears, that guy who you were arguing with, he got kicked out of autonomy.
Oh, yeah.
And the other
That's
guy,
funny.
yeah, I spoke with him the next day and he said that he wasn't fully, I guess he didn't comprehend it, but he said that he needed to kind of look into it more. So that's that. But yeah, I really appreciate you, Chris and Brandon, for being there that day, and it did not go to waste.
Cool. Yeah, content's out there, so it can be accessed by others and learn from it, for sure.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you having me on to get more familiar with doing this kind of thing.
No problem. All right, for real now.
How about trying to get out there and do the actual great works of this world is in such a fucking hellhole, huh?